Hi, I'm DJ Ware. On this episode of the Cyber Gizmo, we'll be looking at Ubuntu 2104 desktop right after this. So Ubuntu has released, now this is an interim release, 2104, so it is not a long-term, meaning that it's only supported for 9 months for their desktop series, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. So let's talk about some of the new features that we can find. Now, it is kind of odd to talk about things that are not in the release, but there's a couple of things that are not in this release. First one is GNOME 40 is not in this release, and the reason for that was that the Ubuntu development team decided that this wasn't enough time for them to get the changes they wanted into the existing GNOME version set. GNOME 40 is a pretty major change, and that would require quite extensive work in order to get it ready, and it just wasn't enough time to be able to get it into 2104. So it also doesn't include GDK4 either. So it does support GNOME 3.38 in this release. I don't really find that a big deal. I mean, that's fine. I mean, get it in whenever you get it in. Just make sure that it's working. The Ubuntu Installer has been updated quite a bit. So the first thing you will find if you're an enterprise user and you need to connect to an Active Directory server, you can now do that. So you can connect to a domain, and then you can use it to retrieve the passwords and the server IDs and all that fun stuff. The other thing is if you are encrypting your Ubuntu install, that is, you're going to encrypt the hard disk on which this sits, you can now generate a recovery key directly from the installer. So that's nice. I mean, I suppose it is possible that you could forget your password on the way in, but it's good that that's out of the way. You've got that recovery key. You've got it stored away safely now. So if you do forget what that initial password is to your disk, then you can get back into it. The other thing is that ZFS, if you install this as your root file system, now allows you to encrypt. So it will encrypt at the boot, so it'll stop the boot. It'll allow you to unencrypt the ZFS pool and then continue on. Now the boot pool, of course, is non-encrypted. It can't be really. So yeah, but the root pool is encrypted. You kind of have to have enough of the file system up in order to boot into Linux. So, and you need that support in order to read the encryption keys from this. So chicken and egg problem, right? It also uses Wayland by default on hardware that supports it. The other thing is Pipewire has been added to the list of tools that are now supported by Ubuntu and their software. So that's good. It is not default, though. It is still using Pulse Audio. But with Pipewire, now you could do screen shares between some other applications that you might be running on. So I find that really nice. I hope to try that out in maybe some future videos and then maybe show what I found. The other one is kind of an important one. This one is directory permissions. Before, Ubuntu on the directory permissions defaulted to 755 as their default, which generally is kind of frowned upon by, especially in the enterprise. You don't want to leave world readables open because then people could read the contents of your home folder. So yeah, they have now shut the world users off. So there's no permissions for either read or execute or write by any other user other than the ones that are members of your group, or it is people using your user ID. So that's a good change as far as I'm concerned. There is an improved dark mode theme that's by default for the core GNOME Shell UI. I hope they'll take a look at that. But if you want to use the light mode, I think it still uses Yaru to do that. But we'll check that out when we get to the install pieces. The other one is there's new desktop icon implementations, and those have re-added support for drag and drop file folders and files from the file manager directly onto the desktop. So that is now supported. That's probably a useful feature. The other one is the Linux kernel. Now, it's been updated to 5.11. Now, in my systems, I've heard that this is also going to be, that 5.11 will also be made available for the older releases of Ubuntu as well. But on my systems right now, it's still only 5.8 is what is supported by 20.10 and I didn't check 2004. I'm not quite sure what version it's supporting right now, but I do know that the 20.10 releases are all 5.8. But 5.11, so what does that do for you? First of all, it adds support for Wi-Fi 6E. It provides device driver support for the Intel Iris Xe GPU, which of course is the new handlers or the new GPU series that has been in development for some time. Now that is the on-chip version of the Xe. I don't know if that includes the support for the discrete graphics card, but yeah, I don't know. I just don't know. Maybe dig into that a little bit and find out. Intel Sgx support is also added. There's performance enhancements for both Zen 2 and Zen 3 CPUs, as well as they have added Van Gogh APU support as well. The XFS driver before did not have a needs repair flag, so you did not know if that particular file system needed repair due to maybe a reboot in the middle of while the system was actually running. A crash or something like that could put the file system in a state where it needs to have XFS repair run on it before it's allowed. In this case, what this flag does is at the time that the XFS file system is being mounted, it will check to see what the state of that flag is. And if it is on, it will not mount the XFS file system until you've done an XFS repair. So, yeah, that's a good thing. That is a good thing. You don't want to have a file system that is in need of repair and continue to use it. That's a good way to lose data. There's also dynamic thermal power management that has been added as well to the kernel 11. There's a lot of other features that have been added as well. You can go out to the Linux kernel development site and peruse the enhancements for 5.11. But the thing about 5.11 you need to remember is it is not a long-term release. The latest long-term release is still 5.10, I believe, at the time I'm doing this video. So the toolchain updates, I always include these. glibc is now 2.33. OpenJDK 11 was in the previous release, but you can now optionally use OpenJDK 16 if you wish. Rust-C has been updated to 1.5.0. The GCC compiler has been updated to 10.3. Python is at 3.94, Ruby at 2.72, PHP 7.38, Perl at 532.1, and Golang to 1.16. The other major update is the OpenZFS code that is used by Ubuntu has been updated from, I think it was 0.8.5, which would be the release where Linux was kind of on its own. They have now updated that to version 2.02, which is a patch release for the merged code. So this version of ZFS is compatible with FreeBSD, with the BSD side of things that are, of course, running the version 2 on that side as well. As far as security features, Secure Boot on x86-64 and ARM64 include SBAT-capable shim, Grub2, and FW update. Now, I'll talk a little bit about some ramifications of that. That's a good thing. There are some problems, however, and we'll talk about that. So, NFTables is now the default backend for Firewall. Subsystems, Pulse Audio is still here. It's still default, and it's version 14. BlueZ 5.56, Network Manager 1.30. So one of the things that as a result of the changes to the Secure Boot is that if you're attempting to upgrade from 20.10 to 21.04, you'll find that your release upgrades are not enabled. So if you go to do a release upgrade, you'll find that it won't find anything to do. And the reason for that is that you can result in a non-bootable state if you're using EFI 1.10. So look for a patch. Eventually, I think this will be supported. It's just a matter of making shim compatible with EFI 1.10. And once that has been accomplished, I believe they'll probably enable the release upgrade. So if you're attempting to do an upgrade from 20.10, it won't work. Sorry. So let's go take a look at a demo. Again, I'm going to be putting this on Proxmox to take a look at it with, and then we'll walk through the installer. Okay, all set, and we'll go ahead and do our usual create a VM. Oops, not 2110. We're not that far out, are we? 2104. Okay, so I'm going to, again, read my ISO from my NAS, which is right there. Oops, that one. And rest of that is fine. I am going to change this over to Spice, given the problems I had the last time that I was installing something here. And yeah, I don't think we need to do that. We'll put it over on the local hard drive. Give it my usual 4 CPUs and 4096. It will not use that, and I think I'm going to go ahead and choose the Intel driver for this. It's just my preference. It's not because it's going to cause a problem to use the default. It's just that I prefer the Intel one. That is built, and we should be able to start it up. And we'll open the remote viewer, and there we are. And I'll wait for this to come back because it's going to resize the screen. Maybe it'll resize it. We'll see. There it goes. It sure did. Yeah, I'm going to be doing an install today that actually uses ZFS on the root file system. So we're in the live mode, and now we can either try it or install it. Well, I'm going to install it. And then our keyboard layout. This is all pretty standard, as it has been in the past. I can then do a normal or a minimal, or I can download updates. If I needed this, I could have put the third-party drivers on. Of course, I don't for a VM, but you might. Now this would do a default install, so I don't want to do that. But if you look here, erase and use ZFS, you now have the ability to do an encryption method. Now that uses ZFS encryption, not LVM. So there's no LVM involved in this. If you install this on ZFS, it will actually turn the encryption on for the root pool. And then we can go ahead and install. There's the recovery key, and then I'll put in this. Let's see. Let me set one up here. Just so you can see how that works. Now you can refresh this, and then you can look at it. You'll probably want to save that someplace besides your home Ubuntu recovery key. You'll probably want to put that somewhere off in a safe location, so in case you need this. So yeah, or write down this recovery key. So I'm going to go ahead and install. I'm not going to worry about it, the recovery key for today. And reaffirming this is what you want set up. There's a partition for the B pool and one for the root. And this will take several seconds, yep, but it's done to set up the ZFS pools. Okay, go ahead and set up a username. Give yourself a secure password, and then you can choose any of these. This is the Active Directory domain if you want that. One of the new changes in 2104. You know, I remember in the past where trying to get Linux to interface to Active Directory was not the easiest thing in the world to accomplish. I'm going to let this finish out and I'll be back. I did not time that, but we're all done. I think it was, we can check on the clock at the top when it was done, but it seemed like it was only like 4 or 5 minutes, so not a lot of time. But then Ubuntu usually doesn't take a huge amount of time to install, and we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, so something to do with the key store. So I need to put my because that would have been about where it would be waiting. So now it has that set up correctly. So now we should be booting in. Yay. That looks good. Now this is probably Wayland. Yep. And then if I wanted to use Xorg, I could. I do not believe that this version of Wayland that is on here has the NVIDIA support in it. I could be wrong about that, but we'll check the versions and we'll find out. Should never make assumptions, right? Because you usually will be wrong. So we'll just check that out. If I want to set up my online accounts, I can. If I want to share information with Canonical, I can. I'm not going to. And then whether I want location services on or not, I don't. And then I'm done. I'm ready to go. So I guess the first thing we'll do is change our display settings and get a little bit more real estate. Let's try 14. Let's try that one right there. Probably need to install the patches. Let's see. Yeah, this time I have a mouse. That's weird. Yeah, that's good. We'll do it this way. And then I can open the details and we can watch and see what actually gets installed. Always good to update first before you start doing anything with it. Just make sure you have the latest changes and bug fixes. I'm sure that they are probably working through some. Anything that's new, there's always, because of the number of people using it, there's always going to be something. All right, so let's see if see what we've got included here. I'm going to go ahead and add this to my favorites. And we'll just take a look. 5.11, patch 16, compiled on April the 14th. I think this release actually came out the next day, the 15th. This candidate release, and then it was converted into a mainstream release once they were satisfied that everything was good. Let's see. Let's do a top. Right now, we are using 1.9 gigabytes of memory. That would include the app caches as well, of course. Setting up a mail server for, by default. And I'll be back. We'll just let this do its thing, and then I'll reboot, and that's when we'll come back in. So I guess what is kind of where my final thoughts are on this release. It has a number of things for ZFS which make this useful. It also has some enhancements for Gluster. So for me, it has some things that I would prefer to have. I have not looked at NFS yet. As far as Ubuntu is concerned, I like the changes they've made to ZFS. I like the fact they're using 2. I like the fact that they're doing encryption. I like the fact that they have, improved security, at least for the home directories. Thanks for watching. Hope you all have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.